Another story, Mark of the Grizzly by Scott McMillion. This one is called, and I think I pronounced this correctly, it's Canada, Banff. Am I right? Big Trouble in Banff. Public schools. And this one will probably take several videos. I think it's about 20 pages. Anyhow, sorry. Nobody knew when or where the bear would stop. It acted like it was working through an international smorgasbord at the Lake Louise campground at Canada's Banff National Park, taking chunks out of Americans, Germans, and Australians as they slept. Oh, Jesus. Oh, how can you shoot them? The sow grizzly, for those of you that don't know, that's a mother, traveling with a cub, hit them all in their tents, ripping through the thin fabric and pouncing with tooth and claw on anything that moved. Details are sketchy, and Parks Canada has refused to talk about the incident. But a few things are certain. The attack would send 6 people to the hospital, scare a lot more than that, ignite a lawsuit, and focus an increasingly bright spotlight on the beleaguered Grizzlies of Banff. The bears hit the Germans first. Algis, oh my gosh, I can't even begin to pronounce this. Algis Pavlovicius and his sister, Tanya, woke up about 3 in the morning when their tent collapsed under a grizzly bear. They kicked, they screamed, and the bear moved on, but not before leaving Algis severely battered and carrying several deep cuts. Tanya was shaken and knocked around some. Then the bears moved to the next campsite, where they shredded a tent belonging to 2 Montana women, Susan Olin and Laura Sheeran, both of them summer naturalists in Glacier National Park. Naturalists. I can't say that. I heard huffing sounds outside, and then the bear was in our tent, Olin told reporters 2 days later from her wheelchair in a Banff hospital. The bear went first for Sheeran. It's spelled like Sheer, S-H-E-A-R-I-N. Sheer, I'll say Sheeran, who was lucky. She was sleeping with her pillow over her head, and the bear ripped away a chunk of it, clawing her under the arm in the process. That was her only injury. Then it laid into Olin, biting her back and chewing on her arm, clawing her face and her shoulders. She fought at first, then played dead while Sharon tried to make herself small in her sleeping bag. Olin would need more than 50 staples in her body and a row of stitches in her face to close the wounds. Wow. I was going to say something smart ass about naturalists, but that wouldn't be fair. Then came the Australians' turn. Owen Herford, love the name, and his friend, Andrew Brody, were still fast asleep when the bear tore the tent right off them. It grabbed Brody's sleeping bag and tossed him like a toy. Then it turned to Herford, ripping open his forearm and his thigh, chomping down hard on his rib cage. Brody had escaped his sleeping bag by then and came to his friend's rescue. He bounced a large rock off the bear's nose, and the animal backed off, growling. Brody jumped behind a picnic table, and Herford joined him there, but the grizzly kept circling them. Both men screamed at the bear. We've got rocks, we've got screaming, and escaping. I've heard no shooting yet. Finally, somebody put them in a car and drove them away. Could have ran them over the car. Olin and Sharon had crawled through a hole in the tent and made it to their car by then too. Olin and Sharon had crawled through a hole in the tent and made it to their car by then too. They discovered later that the bear had attacked the car as well, either biting or clawing a hole in the spare tire riding on the rear of the vehicle like a Jeep has in the back. Clearly, this was a bear with an attitude. Steve Eddington was also in the campground, but he didn't wait for his turn with the bear. There was a lot of scratching and ripping, and it was close, he told the TV crew the next day. So I just thought, well, my turn's next. Opened my tent, turned the other way, and just ran. I kept hearing all these people saying, please just help me, loud screams. In all, 6 people were mauled, 2 got off easy and were treated in hospitals and released. The rest would spend days there. For at least one victim, the wounds would fester for a long time. Clearly, Banff National Park can be a dangerous place if you want to hike or camp, but it's a lot more dangerous. It's a lot more dangerous place if you are a grizzly bear. I'm just not buying that at this moment. When the sun came up that morning, September 24, 1995, park wardens loaded their guns, hunted down and killed a grizzly sow and its cub, and announced that the problem had been solved. That would put at least most people at ease. Attacks on sleeping campers are incredibly rare, and even the most ardent bear advocate generally agrees that a bear that attacks people sleeping in clean campsites ought to be destroyed. After the bears were killed, the campground and trails reopened, and it was business as usual again in Banff National Park. And what a lot of business there was to do. Banff is Canada's oldest national park, and you can't find a prettier place. If you haven't been there, you've probably seen its glaciers and crags and cataracts on TV or in a travel agency poster or a vodka advertisement. But Banff has problems, big ones that park promoters don't advertise. Ones that are a lot harder to solve than the occasional rogue grizzly, and for most people, a lot harder to see. Its wildlife population is fragmented and in trouble. Its water's tainted and the park is too developed. Some Canadians have begun dismissing it as Disneyland North, while others face being priced out of a trip to their own national park while rich foreigners are courted. Scientists and academics wonder if the park will even exist in the next century. The scenery won't go away, of course, but it takes more than pretty vistas to make a national park. Will it be a nature preserve, the heart of an ecosystem where sometimes inconvenient and expensive critters like bears and wolves have a home? Or will it be just another swell resort? The kind of place where elk are considered a golf hazard and there's a lot of Gucci luggage for sale. This is a Canadian problem, and Canadians are working on it, or at least arguing about it. But there are lessons in Banff for Americans too, especially those who care about the future of parks and wild land, who hope to make a living in a place where grizzlies live, who want to do it without killing the bear, who look to the Canadians for help with wildlife problems on the south side of the longest, friendliest border. Let me read that part again. Canadians for help with wildlife problems on the south side of the longest, friendliest border in the world. To get a measure of the problems in Banff, it helps to compare it to Yellowstone National Park, about 500 miles south along the Continental Divide, and a place with plenty of problems of its own. Both are flagship parks, the crown jewels of national systems. They have much in common: mountains, lakes, grizzlies, bears, elk, hot springs, and worldwide fame. The areas around both parks are filling up fast with people, mostly moneyed ones from someplace else. And both parks face a wide variety of complicated problems and competing interests, many centered around the debate over the value of nature. Does it exist for the primary purpose of making money, or does its highest value come simply from its existence? Or is there a way to have it both ways? Good question. In Yellowstone, scientists worry about the park's isolation in the larger landscape, that grizzly bears exist on a lonely genetic island. The grizzly population there appears to be growing, but the amount of bear habitat near the park is shrinking, being gobbled by clear-cuts and subdivisions and ski resorts. That means the great bears, who avoid people and each other most of their lives, have less and less room to spread out without running into man, a creature even more dangerous than another grizzly. What do we have there? Okay. Banff has similar problems, but they are multiplied by vastly greater numbers of people. Calgary is a city of 700,000 people, lies within an hour of the park gate. The town of Banff, home of the park headquarters, is a bustling community of 7,000 people, a place anxious to keep growing. And then there are the visitors. About 7 million people a year pass through, compared to about 3 million in Yellowstone, a place 30% bigger than Banff. Plus, the 4-lane Trans-Canada Highway bisects Banff along critical streamside areas, the kind of riparian habitat so vital to many types of wildlife. It's a road so big and busy that it needs 8-foot chain link fences to keep the animals away from the rushing cars and trucks. Add to this the major railroad line, golf courses, ski resorts, including Canada's largest, and some dams. Put all of these things in the best wildlife habitat in the park and fence the animals away from it, and of course these things must be paid for, so you advertise the place a lot all over the world, which brings a lot of people who expect a lot of services because the place is expensive and they want some comforts for their money. We're going to leave that right there. Love you, God bless.